I miss my great-grandmother. Her wisdom would have been very helpful this past year, as my family went through tragedies and traumas, both at the broad society level as well as at the painfully personal level. She was a woman who was born about a decade before World War I, lived through both world wars, the 1918 flu pandemic, the Great Depression. She lost several of her children, outlived all of them ultimately, widowed at a young age, an abusive second husband, and being able to call on her wisdom and her resilience would be helpful for me right now. The novel A Memory Called Empire takes place in a world where she, and others like her, can have their knowledge, their wisdom, in some cases their skills, preserved. Guy de Maupassant wrote, "Our memory is a more perfect world than the universe. It gives back life to those who no longer exist." That's the opening quote for the novel A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine, which won the Best Novel Hugo in 2020. This is a debut novel and the first novel in a series. While I don't intend to go into spoilers here, I will say that the novel ends in a satisfying way. That is to say, it can stand on its own, and while we can see where the second novel will pick up, the primary threads of the plot are resolved. This novel, A Memory Called Empire, is dedicated to anyone who has ever fallen in love with a culture that was devouring their own. The novel itself is filled with beautiful imagery in the writing and presents a fresh perspective that goes beyond just the plot of political intrigue, which it does weave quite deftly. But two key words in the title tell you what it's really about: memory and empire. In this novel, the culture from which the main character comes, the station, a quite literal satellite state of the empire mentioned in the title, has a technology called imago lines, which are a sort of neurological implant that can provide a sort of download of one's predecessor available within your own mind. This is one of the forms of memory that we talk about in here. These imago lines provide endocrine response and some amount of skill, which is particularly helpful in a society whose literal existence and the survival of everyone in it depend on people who are pilots and mechanics. This sort of endocrine response is, at least in the novel, where much of the memory resides, and that provides one of the forms of memory that we explore here. These imago lines remind me of the El Sabo from Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, a carnivorous creature that has the unique property that its flesh passes on the memory of those that itself preyed upon. If we eat the meat of an El Sabo, we gain the memories and in some sense merge into ourselves the memories, the personalities, the lives of those that the El Sabo itself had previously eaten. Imago lines also remind me of Arabian ghouls, where the name comes from, who had the ability to take on the likeness and memories of those whom they consumed. In the station, This is almost literal, in that one of their rituals for disposing of the dead involves literally consuming their ashes. Although they consume the ashes of their predecessors and download them, this provides a somewhat less barbaric, more civilized take on these other fictional or mythological predecessors. I use that term intently because there's another form of cultural memory that's discussed and explored in this novel, and that is storytelling, epic poetry. Imagine that the dominant human society that takes us to interstellar space is one that, in our time, in our reality, has been subsumed into other cultures. Mesoamericans such as the Aztecs and the Mayans and the others of Mexico and Central America are the clear forerunners for the Teixcatlanli Empire. This empire continues its heritage, teaches future generations how they should act, how they should be, what it means to be an empire, what it means to be Teixcatlanli, via epic poetry. This poetry is a key theme through the novel. We see it over and over, whether it is politically subversive or, more commonly, in service to the dominant culture. A culture whose words for city, world, and empire are the same because they conceive of everyone else as other. It's telling that they refer to our protagonist, Mahit, and frankly everyone else from other nations as barbarians. It reminds us of the etymology of the word barbarian, where the Romans thought that people from tribes around their own empire were unintelligible at first, that they sounded like they were just saying bar, 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 bar. How wide is your conception of we? Is it just yourself? Perhaps you and your family, you and your class, your nation, all humans? Well, certainly it's context dependent, but it's a question that we see over and over in the novel. And in fact, it helps us understand how the empire sees itself and everyone else, including those who perhaps are not formally Teixcatlanli, but due to their cultural imperialism, the Teixcatlanli have absorbed them in some sense anyway. There's nuance here. Imperialism is not the same as fascism. They're both negative, they're both harmful, but in different ways. You can have one without the other, and in fact we see that illustrated quite well in this novel, where the other is intended to be absorbed, to be brought in and assimilated, not rejected and blamed. In fact, we see that some amount of subversion, of slightly traitorous thought, can be encouraged and seen as healthy for the survival and progress of the empire, within some parameters. I'm a child of both the colonist and the colonized, of both the imperialist and those who were conquered by empire. This book gives me a lot of space to think about my diverse, one might say divergent, legacies. I'm still processing that, but I appreciate being able to reason about the complexity, the interplay between these and how they've shaped who I am, who many of us are today. A Memory Called Empire also deals with themes of grief, of losing someone intimate to ourselves that we carry in our hearts, almost literally. It's been said by different people in different forms that in some sense we die twice. Once literally, and once when the last person who knew us passes on. But that's not entirely true either, because there are people who, in a very real third sense, continue living today. People whose thoughts can still be read, whose legacy still carries on. In this, perhaps not literal, but no less real sense, people like Isaac Newton and Gandhi and Harriet Tubman still live today. We can go read exactly their words. We can hear in our minds a version of their voice. They're not forgotten. They still live in that very real sense, unlike many of our own ancestors, perhaps one might say the majority of the rest of humanity, whose names and thoughts and loves and feelings and legacies are almost entirely forgotten now. But their memory lives on in the societies that they built and the societies that are today derived from theirs. As one would expect, given that this did win the 2020 Hugo for Best Novel, this is a fantastic debut. I'm looking forward to reading the sequel. And as I'm living through this time, as we're all living through this time in which we're processing our own trauma and grief, it's worth thinking about these ideas. What does it mean to carry the legacy of others? What does it mean to remember our trauma and the trauma of people that we cared about? How can we communicate to future generations the sorts of people we hope that they are, and certainly the lessons that we've learned through our own pain? Perhaps not through carrying on imperialist traditions, but through our own unique ways of expression. I'd really like to know what you thought of this novel too. Comment below, let's talk about it. And if nothing else, remember to spare a thought for those whose cultures are being devoured by our own.